Hello one and all, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the Pokémon Insurgence New Team for Every Gym Challenge, made of the first 6 encounters that I encounter after beating the gym. Let me tell you, I am pumped up and ready for this leg, and for very good reason. In this episode, we are finally going to access the Safari Zone. The Safari Zone in this game offers some of the best Pokémon to capture in the game, and I can assure you that we will be coming back to the Safari Zone several times over the final legs of this run. In this episode, we'll probably catch 4, maybe even 5 of our Pokemon from the Safari Zone, and I'm ready to catch them all. Without further ado, let episode 6 begin. The upcoming leader is specifically Ghost and Psychic type, which would make catching Ghost or Dark type Pokemon the best bet. Maybe even a Bug type Pokemon or 2 would also be useful. However, some issues arise around here when it comes to encounter rates for Dark-type Pokemon. On the other hand, Bug-type Pokemon are very common, and Psychic is weak to Bug, so there are certainly some options there. However, it is also worth noting that we will be fighting the Infernal Cultist leader today, and we need to appropriately prepare for that battle as well, and that means Water or Ground-type Pokemon, neither of which provide any real advantage or disadvantage for battling the other opponents. But it does present a slight issue, and that will be balancing this team, since we need to cover such a wide typing range in order to win the battles. This is where the Safari Zone comes into play. It has so much to offer. I would love to head there first, so that is where I go. That means avoiding other encounters and also avoiding as many trainers as I can so as to not waste that experience on my old team members. Luckily, and you could probably see in the background, that there were no mandatory trainers on this path, and we can head straight to the Safari Zone to try and make some acquisitions. Of course, the big problem with the Safari Zone is its capturing mechanics. For anyone who may not know, when a player is in the Safari Zone, Pokemon are not captured by battling them with another Pokemon in your party and then throwing a Pokeball at it. This time, the options are to throw rocks or to throw bait. They both have differing effects. The rocks will weaken the Pokemon, making it more likely to be caught, but it will make it more likely to run away at the same time. On the other hand, bait will make the Pokemon stay for longer, but it will make it harder to catch. Going into this, we can assume that we will fail several times to get what we encounter, but we are bound to be successful with some patience and practice. To abide by the rules of this challenge, I will try my best to capture every encounter, and I will just need to settle with whatever I happen to get in the end. Let's head on in! As mentioned before, my top priorities in this leg of the run are to try and capture ground and water types, so those are the first 2 I am going to go for. Starting with ground in the desert, I encounter and fail to catch 3 straight Donphans. I almost felt like my heart might have skipped a beat when I encountered Flygon. Flygon is probably the best Pokemon that you can encounter in the entirety of the Safari Zone. However, it ran away in just 1 turn, so that's a no-go, I guess. My next encounter is the first capture, and it happens to be a Diggersby. This I can work with and be happy to have. Diggersby has a solid moveset and is very strong, so I'm certainly not complaining. Next up, the water. After encountering and failing to capture 3 straight Fraligator, I run into an Omastar. The Omastar I managed to take home, and that's the end of my first run in the Safari Zone. I couldn't be much happier with these captures. Diggersby happens to have Dig and Super Fang, and Super Fang, as we know, ignores typing resistances, so it's very useful. It also has Bounce, which can paralyze. Omastar's ability actually prevents it from ever taking critical hits, so that in itself is also handy. However, its moveset is very much garbage, so we're gonna have to work on fixing that soon. However, before we can make any repairs to these Pokemon, it's time to go back into the Safari Zone. Session number 2. Time to head north and see if we can land the one that I really want, Golurk. As it turns out, fate is not on our side as we encounter and capture an Audino. Audino is not the worst Pokemon in the world, but it is pretty bad. It has good defense, so it may be able to tank hits, but it's that attack that I'm most concerned about, especially with this moveset. Double Edge is not too good because of the recoil damage, and Last Resort is tough because you have to use every other move in your moveset at least 1 time before it'll even work. It probably has a use, but it will take some thought to figure out a good use for Audino. Second, we capture a Girafarig. Girafarig is not bad. It is one of the Pokemon that I told myself I was okay with before coming into the Safari Zone, and I can definitely work with it. It has a solid moveset and it should be relatively usable. One downside though is it has really bad defense and it'll likely get one shot many times. I'm probably going to have to equip a focus sash in order to use it. I choose to stay for a 5th Pokemon and I make the decision to go back to the ground type area and try to land another ground type Pokemon. The odds of me getting stuck with another Diggersby would be A, not a bad thing because it's a very good Pokemon, and B, very unlikely because its encounter rate is only 5%, which makes it just as rare as the infamous Flygon that I would have loved to have. Speaking of Flygon, we tragically encounter and fail to catch another one. Oh my goodness. We also fail to capture a Dugtrio, which would have been fairly good, but there's definitely no complaining when I encounter and successfully capture a Krookodile. Krookodile has very high attack and very high defense, and it has a really good moveset to top all of that off. Additionally, it gives us that dark type advantage we've been looking for. It's just overall a fantastic Pokemon to have and is both awesome looking and is going to be awesome to use. That brings me to the end of the second run through the Safari Zone. This session also went fairly well, and I would say that we're at a fair 4 out of 5 when it comes to catching good Pokemon, which is looking like the start of the makings of a fantastic team if you ask me. But it's not over yet. Time for one last plunge. After taking a little time to research the other Pokemon that are available in the upcoming areas and weighing them against what's available in the Safari Zone, I have decided that the best course of action is to go back in for one last Pokemon. This last Pokemon just so happens to be a Weavile. Weavile is not good for now, but once the battle against the Infernal Cultist leader is over, Weavile will be very useful because again, it gives us that dark type advantage that we want. This was genuinely interesting. It was a brand new way of approaching capturing my new team. It added a whole new definition of random and chance to the Pokemon that I acquire for the team, but it seems to have worked out for the better. It is a bit of a shame that we couldn't land a Liavani or a Flygon, especially since those are the Pokemon who have armors available for purchase after defeating Tane in the last episode, but we do have a good team, and with some strong ground and dark types as well as a water type in Omastar, I'm very excited. This team has the potential to be as kick-butt as the team from episode 3. If you haven't seen that episode, go and give it a watch. Not as good as this one. I was still pretty early to making videos, but it's decent. As per usual, we are under-leveled going into the next part of the game. In the upcoming Merc Forest, most of the trainers have only 2 or at most 3 Pokemon, so even though we usually can't win more than one battle in a row, it is often possible to win one before going back to heal, then follow up with the next battle after that. The level cap here is 65, and we are very far from that number. But as long as we keep winning battles, I don't see a reason to grind for levels quite yet. Once we reach the Infernal Base, my primary weapon source becomes Krookodile. Of course, when we finally reach Zenith, the Infernal Cultist leader, I only have a couple Pokemon in my party and I inevitably lose. Now it's time to grind. On the plus side, I now have 2 lucky eggs, meaning that when the Pokemon holding the first egg faints, I can still get the second one to come in and also gain boosted experience because it's also holding an egg. But I have a new idea. A new idea that might just work even better than the lucky egg. And I know a couple episodes ago I was just singing the Lucky Egg's praises, but that might be over now. Up to this point, I've quite frankly been forgetting about my personal base. The very same one that houses the move Relearner, so that I can go and get some old moves back for my Pokemon. In this base, I can also purchase a level trainer to level up my Pokemon quickly, and also an EV trainer for the purpose of training specific EVs that I want to boost. With the level trainer, I can take advantage of battling Audinos that can't attack me. After trying it out, it turns out they give more than 7,000 experience at one time. Holy mackerel! However, despite those yields, I still have one remaining question. Do they offer the same stat boost as wild Pokemon? Looks like it's time for a little experiment. I'm going to take Diggersby at level 63 and level him up to 64 using the level trainer first. The numbers were, when I leveled up, +3, +1, +1, +2, +2, and +2. The next step will be to go into the wild and train Diggersby up to level 65. This time, the numbers were +3, +1, +2, +1, +2, +2. And it turns out that the overall yield is really no different between wild Pokemon and training with the Audinos. They're the exact same overall. And since I brought myself up to the top tier on the Sonata racetracks off camera, money is literally not a problem because I can just go there, race, and bring home $10,000. In order to make up for the lack of EVs being earned through farming Audino though, I can also utilize the EV trainer that I can purchase. Again, time to go into a small experiment. By looking at Diggersby's speed EVs prior to a speed EV training battle, Diggersby has 4. I initiate the battle and I'm squared up against 3 level 1 Raichu. Coming out of the battle, sure enough, there are now 13 speed EVs. Meaning, for that a price at significantly lower than Carbos, I can gain almost just as much as Carbos through this quick battle. In order to reach max EVs for any category, it would take somewhere between 50 and 60 battles for one Pokemon. That may take a long time, but it will be useful for times when we really need it, such as if we ever get stuck at another Audrey level difficult battle. With all of this new information under my belt, it's time to start taking out some Audinos. But first, I make my usual episodic trip back to Helios City store to purchase the power items. The power items are an assortment of holdable items that promote the gain of a specific stat upon leveling up. 2 episodes ago, I had already purchased the power brace for the sake of increasing my Pokemon's speed. This time, I'm buying all of them so that I can focus on whichever stat really needs help increasing on each individual Pokemon during this specific grind. Also, just look at the footage of this grind. My goodness, they are leveling up fast, and they don't even have the lucky egg. This is by far the fastest grind I have ever had in Pokemon, period. It is true that they only had 5 levels to go for the level cap in most cases, even less for some, and Crocodile was already at level 65 when I started, but it is fairly insane just how quick this happens. Only 15 minutes, no joke. The sped up footage you are seeing is the entire grind. It was that fast. Anyway, enough jabber on the specifics, it's time for action. Time to battle Zenith. And you know what? I not only didn't need to EV train, but this was the first try victory of the entire run. Also, it was very close to being my first ever single Pokemon clean sweep of the run, as Crocodile destroyed most of Zenith's team. The battle started out simply. I led with Diggersby and Zenith led with Blaziken. Blaziken one-shot Diggersby with a high jump kick, of course, but it takes no longer than a few seconds for me to turn this battle completely around. I follow up with Crocodile as high jump kick misses, causing Blaziken to take crash damage. 1 Earthquake is all it takes to finish him off. Volcarona is next, and Earthquake does about 2/3 damage. Then it misses Fire Blast and another Earthquake finishes it off. Excadrill is next and outspeed, so I lose about half my health to an Earthquake, but I retaliate with an Earthquake of my own for a 1-hit KO. Chandelure would have been a 1-shot if it weren't for its Focus Sash, but it goes down in 2 shots instead. Diggersby is next, and it would have been a 1-hit KO because I crit on the Earthquake, but it was sadly wearing a Focus Sash, thus giving it the opportunity to hit back and knock out Crocodile. So sad, Crocodile was so close to just wiping through the entire team. It doesn't have a lot of HP left, so I send in Audino to try and hit it once, but Audino gets 1 shot. I send out Girafarig next, who would have been 1 shot, but I was smart enough to make it wear a Focus Sash, thus allowing it to get off 1 Psychic and finish it off. Mega Macargo is last. I heal Girafarig, hoping it's not a 1-shot. It is, but I send out Omastar next, who finishes it off with a super effective Rock Blast. That hits 5 times. Got pretty lucky on that one. And let's be honest, this was by far the easiest battle of the entire run so far. But holy mackerel, Crocodile was on a killing spree with that battle. It was definitely the right move to equip the Metronome. What Metronome does to the Pokemon that holds it is that every time a Pokemon reuses an attack over and over again in succession, the attack will get stronger and stronger and stronger with each successive use. That is why the last Earthquake Crocodile used before he fainted was really close to taking out another same type ground type Pokemon, Diggersby, because its power had grown so high that it almost didn't matter how strong Diggersby was. It didn't stand a chance against the sheer power of Crocodile's Earthquake. I'm just baffled at how easy this battle was. When one Pokemon on your team is capable of sweeping through 4.5 of the opposition, then you don't exactly need a superstar team in order to finish the battle the rest of the way. On to the next town. The journey to the next town was really nothing to write home about. A few underwhelming trainers, honestly a quick trip. Before I know it, I find myself in Hecate Town. Normally, one would think that running to the gym to challenge Gym Leader would be the next course of action, but first, we need to battle Persephone. Persephone is another cult leader who specializes in dark-type Pokemon. Of course, before this, I made sure to grind my team up to the new level cap before taking on the challenge. And boy, remember how I said that the last battle against the Infernal Cultist leader was a first try victory? Yeah, well, this one's not. In fact, it's very far from it. The big problem is Mega Zoroark. It is a darn powerful Pokemon that I almost can't seem to touch. As you will see in the background, I occasionally manage to find a way to beat it, but then the small portion of my team that remains doesn't stand the slightest chance against the rest of her very powerful team. I've learned since the battle against Audrey in episode 4 that no matter how bad things look, there's always a way. I just need to figure it out. I tried leading with Crocodile, no good. I tried leading with Diggersby, no good. I tried leading with Girafarig, again, no good. Then I tried leading with Audino, and Audino actually tanked a hit. Huh, interesting. You know, at first, I thought that Audino was the most useless member of the team, but this is a showing of some unusual promise. There might be a chance with it here. First of all, it's going to need a whole new moveset, except for Last Resort. That is an extremely powerful move with extra stab power that I need to keep. First off, Thunder Wave will make it so that there is a 50% chance of the opponent failing to hit, which is really handy. I can also use Work Up to increase my attack so that with my poor attack stat, I can still one-shot the opponent. Finally, it's time to take advantage of the worst battle HM there is, Flash. Why am I using Flash? Well, it's actually quite simple. Flash is a status move that affects the opposing Pokemon by reducing its accuracy, and that accuracy drop is the final piece to this puzzle. Now we're ready. The strategy did fail one time, but I stayed persistent and the second try was the one that brought home the victory. It starts by using a Thunder Wave and hoping that you don't get hit. Then using Flash over and over again until Mega Zoroark, disguised as Mega Gengar, currently, has -6 accuracy. At this point, between the paralysis and the accuracy, Audino will almost never get hit except for the occasional shot, but that can be fixed with a simple Hyper Potion to bring us back to full health. After using 6 workups, we have the clear to use one Last Resort and it one-shots. Thank goodness, the biggest threat is gone. Greninja is also a one-shot, but it does hit me with Hydro Pump first. Hydreigon is next, and I try with Audino, but a Fire Blast takes us out before we can attack. Hydreigon is Dragon type, so logically I send out Crocodile to use Outrage, but instead, Hydreigon uses Draco Meteor first and one-shots me. Next I send out Diggersby. This time Draco Meteor doesn't one-shot, but it does deal lots of damage, and it's a 2-shot now. I send out Omastar next, who does a decent amount of damage, but ultimately can't last just like the others. Next I send out Weavile, who has yet to have a useful purpose in any battle, and it will only continue to be as such in this battle. I use Weavile as a hit tanker until I can fully revive Omastar and Audino. Once Weavile faints, I send in Audino to do the same thing here as it did before. Paralyze, Flash, Work Up, and then Last Resort. Gengar is next, so I send out Girafarig. Girafarig has a focus sash so that it withstands one hit, then one-shots Gengar with Psychic. Finally, Spiritomb. I start with Audino to paralyze and flash Spiritomb, but I eventually follow up with Omastar, who finishes the job with Rock Blast. This one really surprised me because of how useful Audino was. Turns out, Audino can be useful and apparently it can defeat most of the opponent's team. Who'd have thought? Well, there remains to be only one more small section of this leg. All that is left to do is to fight the gym leader. Let's see if we can do this without using a heart scale to relearn moves. It would actually be the first gym where we managed to pull that off without using the move relearner. Well, to be quite frank, I didn't need to use heart scales, but it gets even better. I won on the first try. Again, one try, that's it. I lead with Audino against the Delta Milotic. My initial idea was to do the same thing that I was going to do last time. Paralyze, Flash, Work Up, then Last Resort. Of course, she, Diana, had to switch in Cresselia halfway through, forcing me to start the setup all from the beginning. But I soon had to abandon the plan, as it turns out, Audino's Last Resort attack was doing almost nothing for damage. So I switch up the plan a little and switch to Crocodile. But then Diana switches back to Delta Milotic. I quickly discover that none of Crocodile's attacks are doing anything for damage here, so I switch out for Weavile, who finally gets its first moment of good use on the team. Milotic takes half damage to Weavile, then switches off for Cresselia, who also loses half health. Cresselia takes another shot before switching off for Milotic again, who eventually faints to Weavile's attacks. Next comes Gardevoir, so I put Audino back in to paralyze and decrease its accuracy. I switch in Diggersby, who gets one Earthquake in, but then it faints to one Psyshock that somehow got through the accuracy jobs. Next I send in Omastar, and 2 Ancient Powers finishes it off. Gengar is coming out, so I send in Girafarig. Focus Power almost takes out Girafarig, and my Psychic almost takes out Gengar. Unfortunately, Gengar is faster, so its next attack finishes off Girafarig. But Gengar's Life Orb ends up taking itself out at the same time, so win-win. I put Audino in, and Gothitelle comes out on Diana's side. I continue to do what I usually do with Audino. I paralyze the opponent, then decrease its accuracy. At the same time, I take time to revive Diggersby and also heal up the rest of my team, except for Girafarig. I switch off for Diggersby, who gets one shot. Somehow Gothitelle fires through that accuracy drop. I send in Crocodile instead, and 3 Earthquakes does the job without Crocodile feeling a scratch. Chandelure comes in and 1 Flamethrower hits me, doing plenty of damage but not enough for a one-shot, and Crocodile's increasingly powerful Earthquakes takes out another. Yay, Metronome! Finally, a badly hurt Cresselia comes out and 1 foul play finishes the fight. And with that, this leg of the journey comes to a close. Funny enough, even though this was one of the longer legs in gameplay coverage, it actually turned out to be one of the fastest legs to complete in real time. The obvious reason for this is my new method of grinding that is much more effective than before, allowing me to cut my grind times down by astronomical amounts. Aside from that, we now have 6 badges. That means that there are only 2 left to go. The next one is Water type and the final one is Dark type, and then the ever-daunting Elite Four comes last. The hope is that in 3 weeks we will rise as champions from the ashes of this incredibly challenging run. As for this leg, the MVP would have to be a split between Audino and Crocodile. Crocodile I knew would be great for the team as soon as I caught it, but Audino was the one that I believe nobody saw coming. It really goes to show just how powerful status moves can be in battle. If you remember all the way back to episode 1, we never would have beaten Xavier without those status moves. And in this case, Persephone was just the same. We could not have gotten past without those status effect moves, and Audino was perfect for setting up because it has such a high defense. To make it even funnier, we actually found a good in-battle use for Flash. I've never used Flash before. It's honestly a pretty useless move for the most part. When there's nothing else to use for accuracy decreasing moves, just use Flash. It works. In conclusion, I gotta say that I really enjoyed playing this leg of the journey, and unfortunately, I'm now gonna have to say goodbye to one of my favorite teams yet. And, unfortunately, goodbye to you. Thank you so much for being here. Leave a like, subscribe, be sure to come back next week when we earn badge number 7 after catching another new team. See you next week.